hailing frequencies are open.
The Phoenix Files podcast starts now.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Phoenix Files podcast. Crew of Starbase Phoenix here. I am Trent.
And I'm Joe.
And I'm Moltrazahn.
We have a very special guest joining us on the podcast today to talk about one of his main characters. Bentiller is here, everybody. Hello, Ben.
What ho? Jolly good to be here. What?
Well, we are glad to have you on the podcast, and we're talking about that character right there, your namesake, Rear Admiral Benjamin Tiller. So let's jump right in. Ben, tell us a little bit first about your inspiration for Admiral Tiller.
So Ben Tiller came around as when I was a wee tot, which was decades ago. I used to write sketches based in the Star Trek universe. And one of the characters of those sketches was Ben Tiller. So I was looking for a character to bring into Star Trek Online, had an extra toon slot, and I decided that I would bring Ben Tiller to life and expand upon him in Star Trek Online. And so that's how he started. As I developed him, he turned into a much more of a Hugh Laurie kind of character. I was watching a lot of Jeeves and Wooster, which is brilliant, British sitcom television show, about Hugh Laurie plays Wooster, who is this brilliant, not so brilliant, twit of an upper class fellow. And that is where I started to get Tiller's eccentricities, was from watching that, and a lot of his things like what ho and what, and jolly good, I say, all came from Hugh Laurie's performance. And so he's developed as since then.
It seems fitting that he comes from, has a lot of Hugh Laurie in him. I can definitely see that now.
So we know Ben as a Rear Admiral, but he hasn't always been there, obviously. So tell us a bit about his career path and how he got there.
His career path was mostly a series of fortunate mistakes. So he started off, he was in the Academy when Wolf 359 occurred. Just to put it in the time zone, he got to his first command just as the Dominion War was beginning. And that began the period of his life known as the Unlucky Years, in which he managed to cause more damage to Starfleet and Starfleet property than most of the Jem'Hadar, I'm sure. His first command, he was at the, probably going to mispronounce the name, he was at the Battle of Toros, which is a significant battle for the in the Dominion War. And he was using his ship, the USS Zimmerman, and hopefully I'm getting this right, I'm not looking at anything and I don't remember things if I'm not looking at it, but the USS Zimmerman, to shield one of the other ships from damage. And as he was doing that, he decided that he was going to bring his ship straight through the Dominion line and try to break up their attack formation, which of course he was ordered not to do. But being young and fallible and headstrong, he decided to do it anyway. And that got the USS Zimmerman destroyed. But he and most of his crew was able to make it out alive and was able to turn the tides of the battle so that the Dominion didn't win that battle. Command wasn't too pleased about that, so they decided to demote him. They gave him rank of commander and put him in charge of a supply runner, a Tuffley-class freighter, SS Wakefield. And he kept control of that freighter for about 3 months before it was destroyed in a Jem'Hadar ambush. So the command really wasn't sure what to think of him at this point. So they decided, let's put him someplace where he can't possibly do any damage. We'll put him in Starfleet Academy. We'll give him a nice teaching job. And so for about 6 months, he was teaching military tactics at the Academy. And then the Breen attack on Earth occurred. Wiped out his office. along with a lot of Starfleet Academy. And so they've decided at this point that there's just no winning. Let's give him a command and put him out there and get him out in the front zone, so at least he's, helping with the war effort, which was just about over. So they gave him captaincy of the USS Joyce, which was a run-down cruiser. He kept control of that for about 8 or 9 months before he ran into a subspace anomaly, and that destroyed the USS Joyce. He was then transferred over to a Defiant class, a pretty run-down Defiant class at that point in time, the USS Resilient. He commanded that for about a year, and then there was a malfunction, and that ship crash-landed onto a desert planet, L-class planet, where he was stuck with his crew for about 2 years before they could find and rescue him.
Wow.
Didn't have good luck. After that incident, he eventually took command of the USS Boishan, and that was a Miranda-class cruiser. He held on to that for 3 years, longest running ever, until he, semi-retired to the Academy for teaching. And after that, he was approached a few years later to take command of a special project the Alliance was putting together, the USS Wild, which he then held on for about 3, almost 4 years. And that was also destroyed, and he was sent to Solus Nuus, where you find him today.
That is quite the winding path of events.
Yeah.
Poor Tiller.
If this was a D&D game, you're the type of person who keeps rolling 1.
There's quite a bad rumor that follows Tiller around. No one wants to be on his ship for whatever reason.
Can't imagine why.
Oh, who'd you get assigned under? Well, Rear Admiral Tiller, of course. Oh, my condolences, man. Speaking about the USS Wild. Well, Wild? That's correct, right?
Wild, yes.
Yeah. That one has, from what I gather, a pretty prominent story. Could you tell us a little bit about those adventures?
So Wild Roleplay was absolutely phenomenal. It was the first ship roleplay that I had ever done, and actually the first, anything along that lines. But the USS
I think
Wild,
it was also the first ship RP that we did as a fleet. I think it was one of the first ones we did with the 5th.
Mm-hmm.
I think so, yeah. And it was really quite popular. The people who showed up for Wild Roleplay were absolutely phenomenal. Made the entire thing an amazing experience. But the USS Wild was a experimental Pathfinder class. And it was the first attempt by the Alliance to really try to solidify the peace between the 3 factions. The USS Wild had crew from the Klingon Empire, the Romulan Republic, and of course Starfleet and the Federation, which made it kind of tumultuous the first few sessions. There were a lot of fights going around and a lot of differences that needed to be settled. But as it worked, it came together. We had, the interesting thing about Wild is we had 3 first officers. We had a Federation first officer, a Romulan Republic first officer, and a Klingon Empire first officer. And they all worked together to form that kind of function. And there were a few issues that would pop up every now and again between who should have the right say and stuff, but it was all settled. Very good fun. The Wild went on for 3 years. It was really quite fantastic. We were tracing back the path that the USS Voyager made when it first came through. We were trying to collect allies for the upcoming Iconian War for the Delta Quadrant Alliance, and also trying to, smooth over all those bumpy relationships that Voyager left in its wake.
All the trouble they caused.
Yeah, the Wild, that it had a pretty prominent role in a lot of our storylines for quite a while. I'm going to shift gears a little bit, though, and talk about something a little more recent. So, of course, we had a big RP event a while back, Tiller's wedding, Admiral Tiller's wedding. First of all, I have to ask, how's married life for Tiller?
So, Oscar Wilde had a saying, "True friends stab you in the front. Marriage life is quite the same." Oh, sorry. Just joking.
But what made you decide to take Tiller through that relationship with Amelia and have a wedding come out of it?
So honestly, it was kind of spontaneous. You know, sometimes you write a character to do something and it goes along that lines, and sometimes you put a character in a scenario and something entirely different evolves from it. And that's kind of what happened with Amelia Pemberton. So she was first introduced in a forum story, which I'm actually quite proud of. If you get the chance to read the forum story Deep Sea Down, it's really quite interesting. It enlightens a lot of Tiller's earlier life, too. But it introduces her as the daughter of his neighbor, of his old neighbor. And she has a position in Starfleet intelligence as a secretary. And she's dug up this information that relates to Tiller's father, and they are both put together to try to track down this organization of possible terrorists and try to stop them. So that was the first introduction of Amelia and Tiller, and there was this romantic spark that kind of picked up from that. The marriage came in later in another forum story, when Tiller is on the Wild, and he is visited not only by his neighbor, but by his mother, and by Amelia Pemberton. And his mother has come along, and she's bought Tiller's neighbor and Amelia as company, but she's come along with the sole purpose of seeing that Ben Tiller is married. And she decides that, any female crew member she sees is a possible candidate for Tiller matrimony, which, of course, Tiller is not so pleased about. So it's this great epic. If you get the chance to read that one's called Tiller and Tribulations. Trouble and Tiller Tribulations. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But towards the end of that mission... Sorry, what was that?
No, I just want to comment. I hate it when my mom gets involved.
So did Tiller. But towards the end of that episode, Tiller is so fed up, and he's trying to be able to see Amelia, and every possible chance he gets to see her is somewhat interrupted, either by things going on around him. There's a bit of trouble on the station they're docked at, or by Tiller's mother constantly popping up and going, "Oh, well, what about your ops officer?" And Tiller just shaking his head and going, "Bloody hell, how do I get out of this?" But towards the end, he actually gets this time to spend alone with Amelia, and at that moment, he realizes she's the one that I actually want to marry. Not only because I want to actually marry her, but it would help to get my mother off my back. And so that's how that... Absolutely. That's how the whole thing sort of developed. And they kept a relationship after that. They kept in communication. Amelia is stationed on Earth, and Tiller is in the Delta Quadrant, so there's a bit of a distance problem, but they've worked through that. And at some point in time, I decided, you know what? Let's do something cheery. Let's do something happy. Let's try to roleplay this as a wedding and see what happens. And we got dead bodies.
That's true.
It wouldn't be a fifth special operations event if it didn't go wrong somewhere.
It wouldn't be an event in Tiller's life if it didn't go wrong somewhere.
I was just going to say, at least he's consistent. But yeah, so you did create quite the event around the wedding, including this whole Foundry mission, which I think we mentioned a little bit in some previous podcasts. So what inspired you to do the wedding in that way, like to create it as a Foundry mission? And how easy or hard was it to put all those pieces together in the Foundry?
So I felt like the Foundry offered the most potential to be able to work something like this with so many dialogues going on and a bunch of suspected suspects. Oh gosh, there's that awful English again. Sorry. But let's see, how difficult was the Foundry? Well, basically, I've been doing Foundry for a while. A bunch of Klingon missions, a bunch of Federation missions, roleplay maps, and things like that. I've developed a system, a very effective system for working the Foundry. Basically, I sit down, I open up the Foundry mission, and I curse a lot at it.
Seems very prudent.
Sounds like Trent's job.
So that mission was not the hardest mission that I've ever made. It's a lot of dialogue and a lot of triggers. So I need to make sure that when certain dialogues were reached, other dialogues opened up. Certain characters would go to like a suspect room, and different things would develop depending on how you interacted with the dialogues. And that wasn't too difficult, but it was time-consuming. The Foundry is an intimidating beast when you first get to look at it. It's fairly intuitive, but it does take a while. You have to first, muddle through your first mission, but you pick it up as you go along. But it is time-consuming. Was there another part of the question? I've lost track now.
No, I think you answered it pretty well. But sort of following Tiller's achievements through his life like you've had so far, do you have any future goals for Tiller? What's his aspirations from this point out, and what would you like to see him achieve?
Well, I think his main aspiration is not to lose another starship.
That's a pretty good goal, I think. Pretty high achieving.
We can all get behind him on that. We'll all support him with that.
Let's see. So when Tiller signed up for the Wild, to be the captain of the USS Wild, he served a 7-year contract for Starfleet, 7-year terms of service. But he only made it about 4 years, which means he has about 3 more years to serve Starfleet, and he's serving the 5th Special Operations Division. His goal right now is to make it through those 3 years and to retire. He plans on going back to Earth and taking up his position in his old house, Redstone Mansion in the Exeter in England. Exeter Moor in England. And so basically, he's just going to try to stay out of trouble, but knowing Tiller, that's not really going to work. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I'm excited to have Tiller around because I think he's a character that everybody can get behind and everybody finds fun, and I don't know. He cheers everything up around makes everything brighter around the fleet.
Well, his little Tillerisms are quite amusing.
I remember the first time Arkin met him. That was interesting. Standing there staring, and Tiller comes over and goes, "Hello!" Just stare, just look away.
I feel like you haven't been initiated into the fleet until you've had a stare down from Arkin. That's a coming of age thing in our fleet.
Rite of passage, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You've been stared at by Arkin? Great. Welcome into the fleet.
Okay, welcome. So this is our star base. Over there's the lunch bar. It's fantastic. Our 10 fort is down a few stories. That's the Admiral's office. Okay, I just need you to go in here for the next 2 hours. Okay, there's the guy in there. He will look at you and say absolutely nothing. And then you're pretty much then you're registered.
That's it. It's part of our application process now.
And also not noticing him at first because he blends into the walls.
Yes. Well, with that, we're going to take a break. More of the Phoenix Files podcast right after this.
I am the very model of a modern Major General. I've information, vegetable, animal, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the fight historical. From Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical. I'm very well acquainted with matters mathematical.
Hello, my fellow compatriot of playing Star Trek Online. Are you enjoying what you're hearing here on the 5th? Well, I hope so. We're planning to do a lot more for you in the coming days. However, we will be selfish enough to ask you for a small favor. If you have any spare money, if it's $1 or even less, please consider donating it to our Epic plan on the 5th SOD website. Everything you donate will go to a good cause, and it will help us to create more content in the coming time. This is no pressure, this is entirely up to you, and we will love you and observe you from your bedroom no matter what you do. This is Molt, and you have a fantastic day.
And welcome back to the Phoenix Files podcast. We're here again with our special guest, Bentiller. We're going to talk a little bit about some more real-life space exploration stuff. Now, Ben, you actually, this is quite a passion for you, I understand, right?
Absolutely. I was astrophysics major for quite a while, so I try to follow everything very, very closely now.
Well, that's good, because hopefully you can help us a little bit weed through some of this stuff, because there's so much going on right now. Space exploration is really booming across the world, and I think it's really exciting. First thing I wanted to talk about, this actually just came out a couple days ago. Some researchers at the University of Vienna in Austria, they conducted some experiments to see if some of Earth's microbes could theoretically exist on Saturn's moon Enceladus, which we know has been in the news a lot lately because it could potentially harbor life. And not only did those microbes survive the lab simulations of Enceladus's environment, they also emitted methane as a metabolic byproduct, which of course we know is what they found in testing that they did with Cassini of some geysers on Enceladus' surface. So I just wanted to ask you guys what you guys think about this discovery, because now this sort of bolsters the idea that there could be at least microbial life under the surface of Enceladus, which is very, very exciting.
So yeah, I just wanted to say that not only did they survive, but from my understanding of reading it, the microbes actually thrived. They did quite well in those conditions.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Enceladus is a really amazing planet for a lot of reasons, but ever since Cassini, I think it was Cassini that flew by there, it's basically almost entirely guaranteed that Enceladus is habitable. Now that doesn't mean that it's inhabited. That we need more further exploration. But it's definitely habitable, and that is something quite incredible.
Something I always come back to is that there is no water on Earth that does not have life in it. You cannot find any body of water that doesn't have life in it. And we haven't explored any bodies of water elsewhere in the solar system. We found some, there was the bit about Mars and the highly salinated little drips of water. But I mean, we're talking about a moon-wide ocean, which is phenomenal. So you've got all the materials there. I feel like when something's been around that long, your chances of life of some form developing are solid, definitely solid enough for us to go check it out.
Definitely. I mean, I have no doubt that life does exist out there, even within our own solar system, even if it's on the microbial levels. However, I am also a Warhammer 40k fan, so burn the heretic, kill the mutant, and purge the unclean.
I do want to say that I'm pretty sure that microbial life exist everywhere in the universe, not just in places like Enceladus where it's favorable, but I can see it existing in a lot of other candidates, like even Pluto, perhaps, or Titan, very easily. Mm-hmm. Titan.
Yeah, Titan's really interesting. And because, of course, too, there's always the possibility that it doesn't have to be exactly the same as life here. Carbon-based is most likely, but as Star Trek has explored, silicon-based has a lot of similar potential. DNA in the structure that we have it here, again, makes a lot of sense, but that's not the only way you can build a code for life. There's other forms of self-replicating potentials that could develop. And of course, there's stuff that we haven't even thought of.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, if microbial life does prove common, it's not that much of a stretch to say that life could evolve into more complex systems, right?
Oh, I'd say definitely. Once you have the building blocks there, it's sort of a matter of time, because if you have a system that can self-replicate, evolution naturally follows, because if you do a little better, then you replicate more. Granted, like, life did stay in a microbial form on Earth for a long, long, long time. Once it started becoming multicellular and developing a couple other breakthroughs, then it really exploded.
True, and it should also be noted that where primarily all beings on Earth are made out of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, NASA did discover that one microbial life form that uses poisonous arsenic as part of its building blocks.
I love that you just brought that up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's extremophiles, right? And things like that. Archaeotypes, whatever they're called. Something or other.
Archaebacteria, or archaeans, depending on how you want to say it.
The point being that our understanding of what life requires to exist, even on the microbial levels, is not necessarily the whole truth. We can come across other types of life form that can sustain themselves on, base components that we either never considered or, for some reason, we have not yet discovered yet. I mean, everything in the universe doesn't necessarily have to exist here on a little blue ball. There is plenty of things out there to discover, or at least so I am convinced.
I quite agree. And I do really like that you brought up the arsenic example, because it's very similar to the concept of silicon. Because it's, I think, it depends how much chemistry everybody has had or remembers. But everything about elements and atoms is about the bonds that they can form. So carbon can form 4 bonds. Silicone can also form 4 bonds. So it's easy to swap that out, essentially. And that's why arsenic is poisonous, because it can form the same number of bonds that phosphorus does. So you give us arsenic, our bodies treat it a bit as phosphorus, which, as you mentioned, we need. And so it gets incorporated, but it doesn't act in the same ways. It gets incorporated in the same ways, but then it screws things up. But yes, there is this microbe that has just replaced arsenic, or replaced phosphorus with arsenic, similar to like how we talk about the Horta replacing carbon with silicone. Sorry, that's a biology and chemistry tangent, but I think it's fascinating.
But it's interesting. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like we need to have Neil deGrasse Tyson in on this conversation. This is I love the science here we're digging into.
Yeah.
I enjoy the conversation, but I feel like I'm doing homework.
I do have to say, though, if I might, bring things back to Enceladus. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's no mission planned to explore Enceladus any further, which I think is a great shame. Having almost guaranteed that it's habitable, we're not sending any life to prove if it's inhabited, which is calling it short, in my opinion, but there are reasons. And one of those reasons is NASA's prime directive, or equivalent of a prime directive, which states that if there are alien environments, we don't want to contaminate them with microbes of our own. And it's very hard to sterilize. The reason they don't send like probes to these moons is because it's very hard to sterilize all of those microbes from the equipment that we would send.
That is a good point.
I do really like that exists, and I believe it's called the Office of Planetary Protection. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, I do think it's very important that we have that in place. Like you said, it is somewhat of a prime directive, and it does apply to everything we send out. Anything we send to Mars and whatnot goes through all these sterilization protocols to do everything that we can, both so that if there is an ecosystem somewhere, we don't screw it up, as we are very good at doing here on Earth, but also so we don't fool ourselves, so that we don't discover some little microbe and are like, there's life here, and then we realize, oh, it came from Earth, we put it here. Which would be quite the awkward fine. But I also have a similar frustration that there isn't currently an Enceladus mission planned. Although I'd like to think that Cassini was relatively recent, and Cassini analyzing these geysers coming off of Enceladus, it's still quite recent, and NASA always has a lot in the works, often several years and even decades out. So I'd like to think that they will eventually put something together, but obviously it depends upon funding and whatnot too. But I think we'll see a lot of that Office of Planetary Protection come into play when we do eventually. I'm going to be optimistic and say we will eventually send something to Enceladus.
Maybe we need to get a hold of Elon Musk and ask him to send something to Enceladus for us.
Like another car. Digital high five.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about another famous scientist, Dr. Michio Kaku, who just released a book this week called The Future of Humanity, in which he reiterates his claim that he's made and a lot of other scientists have made, that if humanity is going to survive in the long run, that we can no longer be a single planet species, that we have to expand to other planets. Let's listen to something that he had to say in an interview earlier this week.
You view that it is our destiny to explore and to colonize other planets, but some people push back and say, you know what, this Earth has a lot of problems. We need to deal with those right here and right now. Why is space exploration and ultimately colonization so important?
Well, I was talking to Carl Sagan about this, and he said, look, we got to settle Earth problems on Earth. These are political problems like global warming. Going to outer space is not going to solve global warming. However, he said, we should become at least a two-planet species, because we have to have a settlement there in case something bad happens to the planet Earth. Meteorite impacts. We can also have supervolcanoes. We can also have ice ages take place. And 5 billion years from now, the sun will eat up the Earth. It's practically a law of physics that one day our days on the Earth will be over. And that's why we want to make sure that humanity survives all these disasters.
So I want to ask you guys, what do you think about the idea of colonizing Mars? I mean, we've heard this argument plenty of times before that, yes, we need to do this eventually. But maybe it's starting to become a little more prevalent now, too, now that we're actually moving into private space exploration and things like that. So what are your guys' thoughts on the idea of colonizing Mars?
Well, go ahead, Malt. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say that at the moment, we already spoke about this a few times earlier, but at the moment, I think that Matt Damon has jobs he needs to do, so we have to keep it here. Also, I'm not quite sure how the actuality of eating poop potatoes is something that people want to do. And with that, Ben, go ahead.
Well, with those excellent points aside, what was I saying? I was going to say, I full-heartedly agree that we need to be a multi-planet species, especially now when our potential for destruction is so immensely high. If we mess up right now, there's no restart, there's no second life. Everything that we have created, and we have created some amazing things, like Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, or Milton's Paradise Lost, or Nutella. Just amazing things. We don't want those to be lost. So I think that multi-planet system is very good. I think it might be more prevalent to start with the moon than start with Mars. One of the big challenges that we are going to face if we do this is being able to set up a colony that is not only self-sufficient, within itself, but able to harvest material from the areas around it. Interesting discovery. This is a bit of a tangent. I'll bring it back round fairly quickly. But they discovered that water molecules are fairly commonly widespread along the moon. There's no particular place you can pinpoint exactly that says all the water is here, which is a good thing. It means that if we set up a colony on the moon, we can collect that kind of water, purify it, not only for drinking water and for fertilizing plants and things like that, but also break it apart and use hydrogen and such for rocket fuel. And I think if we go to Mars, we need to be thinking about that too. How do we best use the environment to help us survive there?
And I like that you mentioned the fuel component too, because if ultimately and ideally we could set up something like the moon as our launching pad to go do everything else, obviously it's much, much easier to launch things off of the moon than it is off of Earth because of both gravity and atmosphere. I feel like, innovation begets innovation. And if we were to start establishing some colonies, I think we would progress and learn a lot very quickly.
Well, we mentioned it on the last podcast about when we were talking about SpaceX and Elon Musk. I hate to bring everything back to Elon Musk, but if you can't tell, I like the guy. Yeah,
you should bring everything back to him.
But so he has said before that he thinks that he can get his company with humans to Mars in the next decade, if not sooner. I think his previous target was 2025. So do we think that the moon is more important, that maybe he should shift there, or should he just, is innovation no matter how it comes about?
I think that it's important that you dream big and that you have the mental capacity to see those dreams through to an extent. I will say that there is some wisdom in using the moon just simply because of its location and proximity to Earth itself as a testing phase, because you can never be fully prepared for everything you're going to encounter. There will come up some things when we settle on either the moon or Mars that, we didn't think about that. And it's good then to have a testing environment where there is still a method of control closer to base. Because if you go on Mars and suddenly we discover that, I don't know, some components break down due to the natural environment quicker than we anticipated, and there is no means of getting replacements or what have you, then it's better to be closer so we can adjust to this before we do an actual permanent residency somewhere too far away to come to the rescue of.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to agree that it's important to reach. It's important to set big goals. But there are a multitude of smaller steps in between that you might want to get to first, and settling the moon might be one of those smaller steps. Either way, I'm excited to see us try to reach for Mars, send a manned mission to Mars, if not establish permanent inhabitants on Mars, at least send a manned mission to Mars.
Definitely. And I'd like to wrap back around, sir, to the original question about becoming a multi-planet species, and because I quite agree that is important, not just for survival, but like as Ben is saying, to keep reaching, and to keep pushing that boundary. We talk all about the final frontier in Star Trek. But I do always think it's interesting when this conversation comes up, because there's plenty of other scientists. Stephen Hawking is a big one who's like, we're going to die. Let's colonize somewhere else before that happens. A little doomsday-ish. But I do think it's important to think about colonizing somewhere else, but also not use that as a scapegoat to just say, so that things can fall to pieces here and we still survive, because there is so much here. And so many other beings here that don't have that luxury. My career is in conservation, so my immediate thought is, well, that's great if humans keep surviving, but what about every other species on Earth that doesn't get that chance? I don't think we have the right to just write them off like that, but also other humans. It would be a very privileged thing to be able to go to another planet if we do start establishing colonies, and there will be a lot of populations that do not get that opportunity. So while I think it's very important, I think it's to be done in conjunction with also paying attention to the crises here on Earth.
So I heard this, and I'm not sure. It's probably just a rumor, fake news and all that. But I hear that when they do the first mission to Mars, they're going to bring a cassowary with them. It's going to be the first cassowary in space. But no, I do. In all seriousness, I do agree very much with what you said. That while it's important to view Mars as a backup, it's best not to rely on it as a backup, but see it as an expansion forward. I mean, with our expansion into space and our colonization, our evolvement in that, our evolution in that regards, we should also view it as a way to evolve ourselves as species and settling our differences and just, reaching out, finding new places, new ways to settle things and stuff.
I kind of just want to do a throwback to Titan AE. Big, massive spaceship that can recreate a planet and has all the animal species of Earth on it.
Yeah, that's right.
2000 action adventure animated film.
Why don't I know about this? This sounds interesting.
It's been a while since I've seen that. Gosh.
Well, 18 years?
Yeah. Bringing me back a bit there, Molt.
I'm bringing it back!
Well, we could talk about this all day, and I would love to have you back on, Ben, to talk about more of this stuff, because it's all very exciting. Like I said, there's so much happening, especially now that private space exploration is really starting to take off. So, no pun intended. So I'm really excited, but I do want to move on because we are almost out of time, and I want to make sure we get in Canon Rapid Fire, because who can live without Canon Rapid Fire?
That sounds like an oxymoron, since it's a rapid fire with cannons. It seems more deadly than life-supporting.
Okay.
But I agree that it's fun.
Such a buzzkill over there.
I'm sorry.
Ben, are you ready and excited as we are for Canon Rapid Fire?
Well, I feel a bit under the gun, but I'll give it a shot. Ba-bum-bum.
Oh, no. Okay.
Couldn't resist. Sorry. I hope I'm ready.
Well, we love the puns around here, don't we? Okay, so if you don't know the rules, 30 seconds.
There was no response to that. Sorry, I just want to say, you asked, and there was zero response.
Oh, man. 30 seconds for each person. Each person has 3 topics. You have to try and get the other people to guess what they are using single words. And Ben, since you are our guest, we're going to let you go first. So with your first topic, you have 30 seconds, and your time starts now.
Travel. Not warp.
Oh.
Sorry. Particles.
Space.
Faster.
Tachyons?
Voyager.
Transwarp.
Not transwarp.
Space miles per hour.
Slipstream.
Slipstream. Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, quantum slipstream. Good
Close.
job.
Good work, Del.
Oh, man.
Thank you, Molt.
All right,
I know
so
you
we're...
mean that from the depths of your heart. There's no competition here at all.
We're off to a bit of a rough start, but let's see if you guys can recover. Joel.
Hey, I just won. How is that a rough start?
You almost didn't. You had 2 seconds left.
I did.
Moving on, Joel. 30 seconds, your first topic, and your time starts now.
Okay. Starfleet Academy. Gardner. Old. Ah, yes.
Yeah, there we go. Boothby. One for the guest.
The guest.
Did the guest guess?
The guest guessed correctly. Molt, 30 seconds for your first topic, and your time starts now.
Bajoran. Female.
Kieran Reese.
Oh,
Yes.
so close. I think Ben got that one.
I think you did too.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
Quicker on the draw.
Ben, your second topic, 30 seconds, starting now.
3, 2,
Energize.
Self-destruct?
5, 4, 3, 2,
Countdown?
make it so.
Engage? Picard? I don't know.
Riker.
Number 1.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, I get it.
Oh, I see what you did there now.
I like that you made make it so into 3 separate words.
I was actually going for the TOS character there, but that works. That works. Number 1. Jal, your next topic, 30 seconds, and your time starts now.
Lounge, Guinan, Enterprise.
10 forward.
Yes.
Oh, there we go. Molt was on that one.
Snapping that up.
All right, Molt, we got time for one more. So your last item, 30 seconds, and your time starts now.
Trent's hair.
Spiky.
Worms.
Doc.
Yes.
I think I'm going to call that one a tie. That was pretty darn close right there. Trent's hair. Oh my goodness. All right, well, I don't know who won, but I'll let you guys fight over it.
You never keep track. I want to
No,
be able
because
to lord my victories over Molt.
Well, don't you worry. I counted. I only got 1. You got 2 or 3, and so did Ben.
Oh, so we have a tie then between Ben and Jal. Son and death. Sudden death.
On their high horses can sit there and gloat over those that are not admirals.
You know I love you, Molt.
Okay.
I love me too.
We've been requested to do sudden death. So Molt,
no,
give
it's
them,
just a joke.
Give them, no, it's not a joke. That was a request. I take everything seriously here. Molt, you've got one more topic there to use. So here's our sudden death. 30 seconds, and your time starts now.
Scared.
Every starship. Federation.
USS.
Production.
Utopia Planitia.
Manufacturing.
Jupiter Station.
Replicators.
You're drawing this out. Replicators. Ben got it.
Oh yeah.
You were so drawing that one out. Well, congratulations, Ben. You win. I don't know what
Very
you win,
good.
but you win something. Maybe
Bragging
like
rights.
5 EC or something. I don't know.
A new
But
ship.
congratulations. New ship. Wait, who's giving him a ship?
You are. Yay!
It won't
Joy
last
to be
very
the
long.
You don't worry about
Yeah,
making it a good one.
Yeah, you only get one. I'm not giving you any more after that, so don't go blow it up. I want to thank Ben Tiller for being on the podcast today. Thanks for being here. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me.
And with that, thanks for listening to this episode of the Phoenix Files for To Beam Up.